Hi, it's Ray Schelin from Proshaper in Charlton, Mass. And tonight we're working on 9B of the all-aluminum E-Type nose. And this is where we left it off. And it's pretty obvious to me that this is never going to fit. How could this possibly become that? It's impossible. But let's give it a shot anyways. So first we got to do is we left it with a bunch of deep furrows here. So we're going to knock those furrows out. Loosen the wheel up a little bit. I'm just going to smooth this section out a little bit. It's already got the area value pretty much where we want it on this section. Down in the back here we need a little bit more. So I'm going to observe with the light where those furrows are. They're right there. And I just go in there and bring those up. I got medium pressure. That moves the metal. Okay, that's looking good. I'm going to lower the pressure a little bit. Now, someone asked on the forum, what was the, on the forum, the questions and comments, what was the spark that created the idea of my flexible shape pattern system? Well, I started out making these bucks, and I'll have to bring one of the bucks down to show you what they look like. We'll do that in a minute. And the bucks were really easy to work with. They're really not wooden bucks. They're really not wire forms. I call them copy bucks. They're molded. I'll bring one out in a few minutes or so. And as I was making panels and fitting it to the buck, I developed the insight that by taking the panel out of arrangement, you could lower the crown that you could use to get a smooth surface with, but then it wouldn't fit on the buck. So to get a good smooth surface, you always want to use a low crown wheel, which means you have to take it out of arrangement, and then to go fit it to the buck, you would have to put it in arrangement again. So after doing that maybe 10 times fitting it to the buck, it became obvious that there had to be a better way. So I says, why can't I mold something flexible? And my first attempts actually were to try to spray something on and then peel it off. But it had to be something that could go on easy, come off easy, and not lose its shape. And the spray-on techniques that I tried just didn't work. So it was actually a couple friends that gave me the idea after I told them what I was trying to do to use the tape. So the tape has proved to be the secret sauce. And one of my students came in and said that someone else had come up with an idea because they didn't like to do the taping routine, which was tedious and took too much time. So they used this super fine fiberglass cloth and then I believe it was an acrylic resin, which allows a lot of flexibility. And he brought one here to the class And it actually worked pretty decent, but I don't know if I'll adopt that method or not. So, like I always say, there's still a ton of potential discovery in this craft. Just because you get a good method of anything doesn't mean that's the method you got to use for the next 1,000 years or so. Things change, things get better, and always a new approach is possible. So this part of the panel now is shining up pretty good, and it's got most of its furrows out. It's looking good. So I'm going to break right now, and I'm going to go get one of those bucks. All right, so we retrieved the 120 left side rear fender buck, and this is what I called a copy buck. And the way I made this was, as you can see on the inside here, let me flip it over. This is nothing more than a wire form made out of 1/4 inch hot roll wire. And the method to make it was to take a really good 120 rear fender. I had a friend that had collected like 17 120s, and he let me borrow all the parts. And I selected the best stuff, and they might have had a little dent here and there. I took the dents out, and they were, you know, not rusted of any type or anything, so I just cleaned them off on the inside and waxed it with a heavy paste wax. But that was before the paste wax, I would take and make the wire form. The wire form didn't have to be absolutely perfect in its all the bends. So all it had to be within a 1/4 of an inch of the surface of the inside surface of whatever panel I was copying. And after I got the wire form bent up and it was just MIG welded together, then I would wax that inside of the surface and then put the wire form inside the fender, stand it off with a couple 5/16 nuts or something like that, just to get it off of the inner surface of the actual fender. Then my first ones I mixed up just regular Bondo. But later on I started using the water reinforced Bondo, which has micro hairs in it. Much stronger. But the Bondo works pretty good too. So I'd mix up a big batch of the Bondo and then just kind of put it around all the wires. And after about a half an hour or so, you could have it all covered, all the wires would be covered, and the Bondo had been kicked, and you just pull it out of the inside of the fender. Now the lucky thing was that all of the fenders that I made these bucks from, all XK series Jaguars, 120, 140s, and 150s, none of them had negatives so that it would mechanically lock in. So I was able to pop them out. You pop them out, there's a little fuzz on here, you sand it with 80 paper, and it would capture even the little joggle section here. And now the advantage of this is if this was a wood station buck, it's very difficult to clamp to, and it's very difficult to see how the panel is fitting. So this is how I made a lot of the panels on this type of buck. And I would clamp the panels and use a feeler gauge and find out where it was tight. Where it's tight is where it's underdeveloped and has to be developed more. So I could get the panels fitting perfectly on here, and then I would weld them up. And sometimes you could even tack them on here, but the Bondo really didn't like too much heat. I did also install the joggle. Sometimes I would caulk it in with a little caulking tool here and get that joggle worked right on the buck. I had reinforced it much stronger with more metal in here, and this is the waterproof type Bondo with the hairs in it, so it's a lot stronger. Every once in a while it would chip off and I'd just repair it. Not a big deal. But this has ensured a real super accurate panel after you were done, because this was molded off an original, a really good original, And if I could get it to fit perfectly to this, I knew it was going to fit. And as I was making these panels, and I used to make this fender in the rear section, a center section, and then this front section. So 3 pieces. And as I was making these panels, it became apparent to me that I'd have to take it in and out of arrangement like I mentioned before. So eventually what I did was I made flexible shape patterns of panels, the sub panels, and then I could work the panel a lot faster. I didn't even have to fit it to the buck at all until the very end. And the very end was the absolute proof, because what the buck does is it ensures the area value and the arrangement value. Has both of those qualities. And this buck is superior to a wood buck because you can hammer form on it. It also, I even have the locations of where the bolts were for securing it to the body. So I could punch those holes and you could bolt it right onto a car. And it has this great visibility, so you can see exactly how the thing is fitting, as opposed to a wood station buck. That won't allow you to do it. So this is if you're doing production. I was making a lot of these fenders, so I needed something that would speed the process up. And this, coupled with the flexible shape patterns, allowed me to make the panels, I believe, a little faster and very accurate. And I put a standoff on them so you could lay it down on the bench and you could look at it this way. It's easy to clamp to, so there was a lot of good positive features about these bucks. The negative is it's heavy, so you had to drag this thing around and you had to store it. That's why I really prefer it today, the flexible shape pattern. If I was making a fender today, I'd use mostly the flexible shape pattern and use this maybe just for the arrangement. But I still have the potential to use the gauges. The gauges work excellent. So I just wanted to show you that what I call a copy buck. And if you're going to make a lot of something, this is a really good method. The next best method would be, of course, to stamp them or hammer forming, and that'll make them a lot faster, of course. So that's it for the copy buck, and we'll go back to shaping. Alright, so here we are back on the bench. We've got the flexible shape pattern on here. It's fitting nice and tight on there. We've got our little home marks. These are where you have to register it every time. You can't get a good reading unless you hold it really tight right on the surface. And it's a little bit loose over here. I might have to stretch that edge out a little bit. That's nothing. Here, I still need some area value in here. So I'm going to have to pump this up right in here. And I'm going to do that with the hammer. It's right in here. So pull the bag over and we'll give it some light tapping. And at some point, see, we can't wheel this much. We can't wheel this way too much. That edge of the wheel is going to bite down here. So at some point we're going to have to put it in low pressure to planish this out, and we're going to have to go this way. And we're also going to have to tip this over this way to get more arrangement, the proper arrangement here. So first we want to hit this out again. I just want to double check. And it's telling me right here that I need the area in here to fill this out. So, which hammer should I use? Well, this one might be a little strong, and this one might be the one to do. So I'm going to use this one here. I'll hit it a little bit and then check it. Now, if I goof, say I just don't pay attention at all, and I hit a spot that, like that valley, which I said don't hit the valley. If I hit that spot, and that valley might have to move over because the flexible shape pattern's telling me I got to move it a little bit. If I hit that spot, that's not the end of the panel. Anything can be fixed. I've said it before, but I just want to re-say that again, reiterate that anything you do anywhere along the line, except for hitting in the valley. That's a big sin. You can generally fix it. And if you do baby steps rather than doing a lot, it's much more desirable. So I'm just going to pound that out a little bit and see what that did. So these little baby steps. Registered on my marks again. Now I'm just going to focus right in here. It's loose right in here, so I got my hand on it. Finger there. That's going to move that valley over a little bit. It needs to go over. Let's check that. Now, if I got in trouble, it would be the edge coming loose. This is popping a little bit here, but if the edge is truly loose, that would mean that you would have what I call pinch an inch. And I think I've showed this before, but if you do an overdevelopment, I just simulate it by putting a blob of paper under here. If I pump that up too much right there, then it would get loose like this, and I can go like this and pinch it. I call that pinching an inch. If you have a spot where, okay, that's popping up like that, but I can push it down, but I don't have the ability to pinch an inch, there's no extra there, then that's not really overdeveloped. So we're all set there. Especially we're reading peaks and valleys here. These get averaged out, so it actually will drop down by the time you get it planish. So it's probably causing this to do this, but I wouldn't worry about it right now. So I'm going to start on this end. I'm going to work my way up. And I got a little bit right here. Like I said, the valley's moving in a little bit. Here's the actual valley line with this blue. So I got to move that in a little. So all I'm doing here is reading the blueprint, just like you were doing a machining job. There's no magic. It's not because I have a lot of experience. I'm just purely following the blueprint. Exact same thing as if you were following the buck. If you're following the buck tells you what to do. So that's filling out nice. That right there might be a little bit over, but that's just a mountaintop from hitting, and that'll planish out. So I'm not going to go over there anymore. We'll work our way down here. We got looseness in here, so I got to move that in here a little bit. Now there's really no difference if you do this with the hammer or you do it with a power hammer or a planishing hammer or an English wheel using a patent method. It's all the same deal. It's a matter of adding area by thinning the metal and therefore expanding the metal. So we're just doing it with a mallet. Alright, now that's getting to a point where I kind of like that. We'll go down here. It's not bad. I think we'll go next step. We'll planish that out and see what we got. So take the dust off, and then we'll wheel it. Now when we wheel it, let's see if this wheel is going to bite. A consideration is always edge bite. And this is a very wide wheel. Will it edge bite? Edge bite's not the end of the world. It'll make a little mark. Looks like I'm going to be able to go through that way. I've got low pressure here, so I'm going in the reverse curve area, but very little. I'm just going to get over to it and stop, but I got to planish this out. So we'll take and traverse this whole area here and give it a little more pressure. Settle those walnuts down. The tail's hitting that way, so we're going to push it in through the other way. You see those walnuts smoothing out. More pressure. It's just a wiggle action here to traverse the panel. All absolute beginners on the English wheel, the first thing they have to do is learn this little zigzag wiggle motion to be able to go anywhere they want on the panel. They got to internalize that, and it takes 10-15 minutes for your brain to figure out what you have to do, and then you don't think about it. It just happens automatic. So what am I doing? I'm just looking for spots that are still a little bumpy here, and we're just crushing them down. That's all. So now what we can do is start putting the roll in. And to do that, I'm setting the arrangement a little bit. And that will take this curve out and put that curve in. And the mystery of that is something that takes a while for your head to get wrapped around. But eventually it becomes very easy to understand, and you know what the actions and reactions are going to be. So the more I pull this edge down, and I'm doing that by pulling down on the panel as I pull it out, this curve will lessen. And that's what we want. And then we'll get a more accurate reading on with the flexible shape pattern too. This is that really stiff Chinese sourced aluminum. Like I said, I really like it after you get the panel made. You kind of curse at it while you're making the panel, and I could resort to annealing. There will be some points that I probably will anneal sections of this, especially around where that headlight bucket is, the joggle for the headlight bucket. You can see that starting to come over. Now we're adding area here too. If I lessen the pressure, there's less chance of adding more area. Alright, so it's starting to look a little better. Let's see what the flexible shape pattern says now. You can see the curve. Let's get it a scale here, and we'll measure how much the distance is up from here to here. We get a 1 foot scale or a 2 foot scale. So we're at 6 inches right now, and I think before we were probably at 10 inches, so we lost about 4 inches of height. So keep in mind that 6 inches, you see that's going to go right down really easy as that comes over. This is just a flat plane with a little crown to it that has very little resistance to doing this bend. This is the part that gives you the resistance. So we've got to tune this in, and this is eventually going to have a flange that's about an 8-inch, yeah, 7/8 to an inch or so. So get this back on our homes, and we're actually looking pretty good. So to get a good reading, we're a little loose over here, so we might be a little overdeveloped here, but that's very easy to fix. We just got to stretch this edge a little. To get a good reading, you have to have it on the homes, and the homes are the little corner marks here that I did with magic marker, and you have to go back to the same spot every time, and we'll look for high spots here where it's too high, which can cause a problem. And I don't see anything. So it looks like I got to build up here a little bit more. Always look for the worst spot. So right here, as this has got to come up right here. A little bit over here too. But I'm going to do this first. We'll see if we can get that better. So right in this little section here. Pop that up a little bit. Let's see if I get more of that dust off of this thing. Still got a lot of dust. Okay, so that looks good right in here, but right here I need some more. So right in here, and you don't have to mark it with a magic marker. You can just run your finger on there. So I marked it on that side, and then I'm going to hit it on this side. And check to see if I got it in the right spot. It's looking pretty good. A little bit more over here. Alright, still all through here. Right in here. And then I'll wheel it. Let me dust it. Now, a really nice feature of this flexible shape pattern system is if you make the flexible shape pattern to a very high standard, and you make your gauges, which can be made out of cardboard initially, to a very high standard, then you take the gauge. Let me show you for a second. You take the gauge. This would be gauge number 24. And can you swing the camera over here? Mark swinging the camera over. So if you had gauge number 24, you took a piece of paper and just traced it with a marker or a pencil, cut it out with a pair of scissors. That would record that proper profile. And that is all indexed on the flexible shape pattern. So you could have somebody in Europe or Australia or wherever make a very accurate flexible shape pattern, send it here to me in Charlton, Massachusetts, and using that blueprint of the flexible shape pattern and gauges, I can make a super accurate panel, whether it be a fender or a door skin, or it doesn't matter, and then send it back to the source, and it would fit the car perfectly. And I've done that. So I think that's a big advantage over a buck. Of course, you can send files now, electronic files, and you can cut a wood buck. But that's a pretty expensive method. You have to have somebody to do the CAD work and scanning and all the other stuff, and the CNC wood cutting, the expense of the wood. For a one-off deal, I think the flexible shape pattern is a really inexpensive, easy to understand method. So. Now, I put the idea of the flexible shape pattern out on the forums. There's both the Metal Shapers forum that was originally a website. Actually, it was at E-Groups originally back in, it started in, I believe, 2000. And also Metal Meat. Both of those forums I was very much involved in. And I put the information about the flexible shape pattern in those forums. And some people adopted it, some people didn't. Some people fight it. So, but I think it's a really, really valid system. And I think it really helps people all over the world be able to understand the difference between area and arrangement, and being able to make replacement panels for their projects or scratch build projects at very inexpensive methods. So it doesn't cost that much for a little postage and some tape and some paper. So here we got that planished out. Now let's see what that says. That's looking a lot better. Now you see this came off here, so I'm too high. This has to come up, so I'm going to have to beat that with the hammer, and then I'll wheel it. And that's a spot that has to be corrected. You always look for the spots that have to be corrected the most. This filled out really nice. That's looking really good. So when I got it on my homes, it's actually not that bad. It's just a little bit right here. In fact, what I probably will do is I only need about, I think that edge, I'm looking at the edge over there, it's less than an inch. So I'm going to mark this and trim this excess off, and then I'm going to just wheel that edge and it'll bring it up. I don't have to, if I orient it way over here, but that was way off my marks. See, then I got a big gap there. But when I put it on my marks are right here and there and there. It's just, well, it's actually not bad at all. Yeah, it's fitting right on there. So this was really loose. This is getting a lot better. There's a little bit of looseness up in here I got to deal with. But I think what I'll do is I'll remark all my corners. They're in a red pen, blue pen. I'm going to put them in a black pen now. And then we're going to trim this edge off. This edge doesn't mean anything right now. This edge doesn't mean anything, but this edge is significant. So we're going to trim off the excess there. So we'll get our new corner marks. And the corner marks creep because as you wheel the panel, it actually grows in length and width. So they'll creep a little bit. So there's the new marks, and then I'm going to put the marks for the cutting. I'll just guesstimate here. We're going to put a blue tape line here to show where I want to cut it. And that still gives me some error factor here, in case I need to move it. And I can move it this way because I got a lot of extra material here. So let me get some blue tape. I'll blue tape that line up, and then I'll get the cordless shears and zip it off. All right, there's been on the comment section of YouTube, my videos, there's been a lot of questions about these cordless shears. They're pretty attractive to everybody, and I can see why, because they're just a really, really good tool. This one is a Bosch, and this one I believe has been replaced. This is a 12-volt model. There might be still some of those out in the marketplace. And this is a PS70 12-volt model. Works excellent. The battery will last a little longer. It's a little bit bigger battery than this one. This is a Chinese source one, but sold by Menards in the U.S. Everybody probably knows what Menards is, but outside the U.S. they might not. Menards is like a Home Depot, general supply for household and commercial wood and all the supplies you would need for working on your house. And I think Menards has a brand name that they developed called Master Force, and then they just gave some Chinese company the order to make these cordless shears. And I think the intent was on roofing. A lot of times they use copper in the valleys, and they were selling these as cordless shears for that Copper Valley work that their roof clientele would need. Now, I bought this online because there's no Menards in the Northeast U.S. They're only in the Midwest, and I think I got it out of Ohio. And it's a really nice one. It's got a much smaller battery. It works equivalent almost to the Bosch. The Bosch might be a little bit better. The Bosch has a nice little feature, I think, shows the battery strength right here. So I'm on only one on the battery. They both came with 2 batteries, so I have one always charged, and it takes about 15 or 20 minutes to charge them. And they're a really nice tool. So this isn't a really precision cut. I'm just going to shear off that excess there, and I'll do it with the Menards one here, the Master Force. So some people have told me that they're not selling them anymore, but you know, sometimes they're not available, and 2 months later they're available again. Now there are other brands out there that these were inexpensive. This was like $163, I think, delivered to my door with the UPS charge, and this one was like $324. So for the money, you know, it's a toss-up. Who will last the longest, I don't know. But this Bosch has seen a lot of abuse. It's gone through a lot of classes. It gets a lot of use, and it's still going. So. Now I even do precision cuts with it. I'll use the blue tape to guide my cuts, and if you hold the light right, and this one I didn't cut really close, but generally I'll cut a little wide of the line, then I'll grind it in with a 50 grit little air sander, rotary grinder, and get it right on the blue tape so I get a precision line if that's going to be a weld point. So I make sure that that's just right. So they both work really good, and we'll take the tape off now. And if you're cutting with something this way, this will navigate through it pretty good. Sometimes you have to cut like this, and if you try to cut like this, what happens is it'll conflict here, and you'll get a little binding. So if you have to do a cut like that, then what you do is you do it upside down, and you just walk the head through upside down. It works really good. And you can do precision cuts, you can do tight turns with them. They're a really nice tool. If I was a dealer of them, I probably could have sold hundreds of them already at my class. So unfortunately, I'm not a dealer of them. So here we are, and we cut that off. It leaves a little burr here. If I roll it on the wheel, it'll take that burr right off, or you can sand it with 80 paper. So I'm going to just do it through the wheel, and that'll lower it right down. Alright, the burr's gone. So let's reassess here, find out where we need more work. Okay, so we've got the flexible shape pattern on. We're pretty nice in the front here. Right here is the worst spot now. I've got to pump this up right here, right next to that valley. So mark it again with my finger. It's right in here. And I'm going to bring that up a little bit right there. Now, when you're using a buck, you're always looking for tightness. Where is the panel tight when you run the buck? Where it's tight, that means you're underdeveloped there and you have to bring it up. This is the exact opposite. Here you look for where it's loose, the exact opposite. And you find the spot that's the loosest and you tighten it up. So these are all getting better. I do have a little overdevelopment here. I'm going to have to wheel that edge just a little bit because it is a little loose right there. But very, very minor. So it's still all along here, right adjacent to where that valley is. It's got to pump up a little more. So we'll give it a little more. And you want to do this in a measured way. You don't want to go too wild. Be the same thing if you're fitting to a buck. If you go too fast on it, you're going to overdevelop it. Overdevelopment is not the end of the world. It can be fixed in several ways. So, but don't make that mistake. Just be cautious. Alright, and then we'll wheel that out, get that all smooth, and take another reading. I'm stopping right before that valley. I'm probably just kissing the valley a little bit. But I got to get this development of the edge of the valley done. That has to happen. And this looked like a really simple panel, but it really isn't a really simple one. It's pretty complicated because of the reverse curve. Anytime there's a reverse curve present, it adds a layer of complexity to the panel. Alright, so I want to just hit this edge just a little bit and bring this edge up because I might be a little strong right in here. Not a big deal. That's actually a good indicator that you're close to full development. If you start getting a little loose on the edge, then you just wheel the edge a little bit. So that should have fixed that. Now, we're going to try to set the arrangement. Remember, we were at 6 inches before, and we're going to bring it down to 4 inches probably. So we're going to pop this over. I'm going to get some gloves on. It's biting me a little bit here. Too loose. I just need enough pressure so that it pinches the metal. And the down is on the pull-out. You pull down on the pull-out. Now that edge is a little loose. I probably went a little too strong on the release of that edge, so I'm going to just give it a little pressure to tighten that loose edge up. And just 45 right up to the edge, and that'll tighten it back up again. So you have control. Add, subtract, anywhere you want. Oftentimes it's easy. Sometimes it's a little hard to do the add, subtract. Later on in the game, we're still developing the panel, so. You see where that is pooching up there, peaking. That tells me that I got to add a little more area in here because it doesn't want to go over without adding a little more area inboard. So I'm going to just pump it a little bit here. I raise the pressure. Alright, now let's see what we got. We got it 4 inches. So we lost 2 inches in that. And this is still going to come around some more, but it's not there yet. But let's put it over here. And you saw the first opening shot, it was way off. We pushed this down, it's starting to get in there now. Of course, this has the flange in here, which is going to be tipped over, and that's holding us a little bit. So let's see what the reading says now. And we'll still have a few spots that are deficient. I got to, there's a little bit of extra right here. I got to wheel this edge here. And what do we got? Looking pretty good. It's a little loose over here, so I'm gonna hit that edge there a little bit. So I'll tighten through here. It's loose right here, so this is going to pump up right here. So that looks like the worst spot to me right here. So I'm going to pump that up a little more right there. I can see that light line where that valley is. I just moved that valley, and that light line's looking pretty good right now. See what that says. I'll have to wheel it out. Let's see. Maybe go a little bit more there. I'll wheel that. Dust off. And let me get my gloves on again. 1 second. And we're going to pull it over some more here. Loosen it up a little. These panels are great for knocking buttons off. I lose a lot of buttons. Just cuts them right off. So if you wear a vest, leather vest, it's a lot better. I don't like the extra heat though. And then this edge was showing looseness right here, so I got to wheel this edge up a bit here. Bring this up a little bit. That means I'm stretching the edge a little bit. It'll go into a wave, and then I move that wave inboard until it goes away. That gives me my stretching from the edge into the interior of the panel. So that looks okay. And then this edge here was showing a little looseness. And I'm gonna put a little stretch on this edge here too. And then let's see what we got now. So, panel's looking a lot better. See if we can set the arrangement a little better. Bring that around some more. Yeah, I probably have to use a fulcrum block to get it to come over. It's just really resistant right now. So let's see what it says here. There's my mark. My mark disappeared over here. We got the mark over here. So the magic marker washed off a little bit on 2 of the spots, but it's registering right there. So I got to re-ink those 2 spots. 1 and then 2. I'll darken these up a little bit. Alright, so that tightened up over there. We needed still a little bit more. This tightened up a little bit. We need a little bit more there. I could trim this off and that'll make it easier. I could trim that off now, which I'll probably do. But we're getting long here, so it looks like we're going to have to do a 9C to finish this up. So here's where we're at now. The panel is pretty close. I would say it's probably about 90% or 92% or so where it needs to be. There's still a little looseness right here. Tiny bit on this edge. We're going to trim this edge, and then get that tightened up there. Alright, here we are with this panel 9B. And we've got it up to probably about 92% development or so. It still needs a little area over here. Of course, you can see that it needs arrangement value. We're not ready to put the profile gauges in and stuff. And we're going to have to make a 9C. And the next video, 9C, we'll hopefully get it all set in arrangement, get the area value tweaked perfectly, and it should be close to developing where the weld zones are going to be. So that's it for tonight. Wray Schelin, Proshaper Sheet Metal in Charlton, Massachusetts. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Proshaper channel. Tell your friends and comment, ask questions. I answer all the comments and all the questions. Thank you. It's Wray Schelin.